So let's just get straight into the questions that we had sent through. The first one is with regards to an explanation of. It's the relationship with the world that gives you joy or sorrow and not the object. So this is one of the fundamental principles of this philosophy, and it's directly counterintuitive to what we experience in the world. So what we experience in the world is that we contact an object and we get joy from it or we get sorrow from it. And what we then do is conflate the object itself with the joy or sorrow that we experience. And so then we say that object is joy-giving, or that object is sorrow-giving. And then we are attracted to it or repelled from it accordingly. This idea turns that on its head and says that it is not the object giving you pleasure or displeasure, but rather the way that we are relating to it. So think of it the other way around. If the worldly objects per se were responsible for giving joy, then what would be a natural consequence that we would observe in life? Everybody would be made happy by the same objects, and everybody would be made sad by the same objects. So think of it from another perspective, an analogy of fire. Heat is inherent in fire. It's actually there, which is why all of us are warmed when we sit next to fire. Inanimate objects, put them next to fire. They also get warmed. So the heat is inherent in that flame. As a consequence, that heat can be imparted to the objects that it touches, including us. The objects of the world don't have joy or sorrow in them per se. If that were the case, then the joy would be imparted to me in the same way that it's imparted to you. And we know that that's not the case. We all have different relationships with the various objects, and it's those relationships that determine the joy and sorrow. So we think about this from the perspective of the receipt, reaction, response mechanism. So we receive a stimulus from the external world through the sense organs. This is the receipt. Then the inner personality of mind and intellect reacts with that. So that reaction is where the joy and the sorrow is happening. To complete it, we respond back into the environment according to the reaction that we have had. And so the world comprises triggers for our reaction. The inner personality comprises cause for our reaction. So the objects of the world can trigger joy and sorrow, but what are they triggering? Well, they are triggering the internal cause. So take, for example, sorrow. We experience sorrow. Why? Where does it come from? From the mind. Exactly. This is where sorrow comes from. Specifically, an ungoverned mind. As you were talking about, unmet expectations, because we are relating to the world through likes and dislikes. Unfulfilled desire. So a desire is a type of relationship with the world. It's the relationship of I demand, I want, the intent to acquire and enjoy. This is a method of relationship. The ego also functions by going into the past and the future. So we worry about what we have done. We are anxious or dependent upon some future outcome. This is also a form of sorrow. And of course, we always talk about attachment. So if I'm attached to something, it means it's necessary in my environment for me to feel comfortable. When the object is not with me, the attachment is strained and I feel uncomfortable. So desire, likes and dislikes, expectation, mind going to past and future, attachments, these are all methods of relating to the world. So if I expect my partner, my children, my siblings, my parents to be a certain way according to my mental pattern, my values, then when they function different to that, I feel sorrow. If I have a feeling of let each person express their nature, express their free will, then when these individuals function according to their nature, I experience no dissatisfaction because I had no expectations on them. So where has the dissatisfaction come from? My expectation. And the same thing when it comes to joy. We can ask the question, how does it arise? We can think of it in terms of the satisfaction of desire. Why am I experiencing joy? Well, desire has been satisfied. So in the Bhagavad-Gita chapter 18, he talks about 3 different qualities of happiness. So the one that we're probably most familiar with is rajasic happiness. So you can think of this as we see an object in the world and we pursue it for our own ego-centered gratification. And we get a degree of satisfaction and happiness from it. But we know that that is diminishing. And the example we always use, of course, is mango season. First mango of the season is glorious. Take another one, it's okay, but not so great. Third one, meh, it's okay. If I continue pushing mangoes in, then I'm going to end up at a point where I'm getting no more satisfaction. But if I've also developed a clinging attachment for that habit, then I'm going to be dissatisfied when there are no mangoes around. So this is rajasic satisfaction. Worse than that is the sort of satisfaction that we get not by acting or by satisfying our feelings or our thought processes, but rather by avoiding them. So it's done out of lethargy, out of procrastination, I can't be bothered, or an abject sense of fear or terror. So we don't do what we ought to do, and we don't even do what our personality is asking us to do. And in that avoidance, there is a sense of peace. But it's actually no joy. It's the opposite of joy. The highest form of joy is that which comes from the pursuit of higher values. And that expands. Whereas rajasic happiness diminishes as you contact it, sattvic happiness increases as you contact it. Because it's being done in a way which is not constrained by ego and egocentric desire. If my relationship is tamasic, rajasic or sattvic, then accordingly the joy that I experience will be. So generally speaking then, what we're talking about with regards to this question is that our relationship can either be involved or objective. So it's the involvement that brings the agitation or the sorrow. And objectivity is peace. So these, broadly speaking, can be the 2 ways that we relate to the world. Involvement means that it's our own egocentric demands and desires that we are relating to the world through. Objectivity means that we are relating to the world through higher values. And the example that we always use, of course, is when we are watching a movie. We relate to movie events very differently to real life events because of our knowledge. That gives us objectivity, and so we don't experience suffering in the movie even while we are going through sadness and heartbreak and outrage and tragedy and loss within our own personalities.